Powerlifting 101, your very first workout. What's up guys, Matt Dasher here from Blue Star Nutraceuticals, and today I've come to tell you all about powerlifting, how to get started, what the main lifts are, and all the pointers you need to know to make sure you could walk into any gym setting and feel comfortable getting started on your powerlifting journey. All right, now, what is powerlifting, guys? So powerlifting essentially boils down to three main movements. So we've got the squat, the deadlift, and the bench press. Do we do other movements in powerlifting? Competitively, not really. Are you gonna do stuff for workouts that are gonna help with those movements? Absolutely, but those are the three main movements we wanna focus on in terms of competitive powerlifting, and those are the three main movements we're gonna talk about today. Now, since every great workout starts with a great warm-up, I wanna show you guys a few key warm-up exercises that are gonna help you specifically for those three exercises, okay? There's tons of different warm-up stuff that you can do, but there's a few key areas that you need to make sure you're mobilizing before you try to maximize your benefits in these movements. So we're gonna go ahead and get started with that. I'm gonna set down this super heavy duty belt. I'll probably put a shirt back on at some point here, but let's get started. Listen guys, I've been lifting for a long time now, 26 years. And I know what you're thinking, I look amazing for my age. But I know you're also thinking warm-ups suck, they're the least sexy part of a workout. And I get that, I used to think that too. However, once I understood the science behind a warm-up, once I understood that a warm-up could make me lift more, could help me generate more power, could add pounds to my bench press, then it became exciting. So I know this stuff doesn't seem like fun, but if you try a workout without warming up properly versus one after warming up properly, I've personally noticed a 10% difference in my deadlifts before. Doing a proper warm-up allows you to maximize your body's capacity to generate force. So don't think of it as just getting warm. Think of it as turbocharging your body so that when you go into workout, you're ready to kick ass, all right? Squats first. So one of the most important things that we can have when we're doing squats is ankle mobility. If you don't have enough ankle mobility, you're gonna have a hard time squatting properly because the knee can't move far enough forward. So we have to dump the torso forward, which is gonna exponentially increase the pressure on the lower back. So instead of having a nice upright squat like this, you're gonna end up tipping really far forward and potentially hurting the back by putting a ton of shearing force on the lumbar vertebrae. So I wanna make sure that I'm mobilizing the ankle joint for sure. I like to use foam rolling as the start, as the first part of this. It doesn't have to be used, but I find it particularly effective. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do about a 30-second long application. I'm gonna use the foam roller on the outside edge of my calf, and I want my foot to stay nice and relaxed. Now the key to doing this properly, guys, is that on a scale of 1 to 10 of discomfort, I don't want you to get past a 6 or 7, okay? What we're trying to do is minimize neurological tone. That's just a fancy term for relieving some tension. So you wanna make sure that you're not taking yourself to a 10 out of 10 on a pain scale here. Now I like to do what I call a scan. So I'm gonna run my calf up and down the foam roller here, and I'm gonna find the worst part. So the part that kind of makes me wanna wince a little bit. And then I'm gonna apply pressure until I hit about that 6 or 7 out of 10. So right now, I prop my body up off the ground a little bit. I'm at about a 6 or 7 out of 10, and I'm on the worst spot of my calf. So I can hold this for 30 seconds, or if I want, I can do what I call micro oscillations, which is just a fancy term for really small movements back and forth. But either way, what I want you to do is make sure you're spending about 30 seconds. You don't need to do 45 seconds. You don't need to do a minute. Again, we just want a minimum effective dose here. So we wanna make sure that we get the response we're looking for while wasting the least amount of time. Once I've done that for about 30 seconds, I'm just going to pull my toes up and then push my toes down for about another 8 to 10 reps. Okay? Again, what we're doing here is we're just doing what's called a pin and stretch technique. If there's a knot that we're on, we're trying to groove that knot out. And essentially, it's almost like what a massage therapist might do for us. We also want to think about for squatting that we're making sure that we get shoulder mobility. If I can't get my shoulders behind the bar properly, I'm gonna have a really hard time doing a squat properly. Now, the benefit of us going into this is we're also gonna need shoulder mobility for bench pressing. I can take the foam roller here. I could also take a lacrosse ball if I had one up against the wall. The main thing here is I want to release this area here. So the pec minor is gonna be the key muscle to release. The pec minor goes from the front of the shoulder here and ties into ribs 2, 3, and 4. You don't have to remember that. What you do wanna remember is the location. So I'm not trying to release through here. I wanna get in between the shoulder and the pec. Get my body across this foam roller on an angle. So guys, same idea here. I'm gonna put a little bit of pressure on this. I'm gonna let my hands stay internally rotated, and I'm just relaxing this area. Now, all I'm gonna do is roll around a little bit until I find that spot where I'm feeling that 6 or 7 out of 10 of discomfort. I'm gonna hang out here, again, for about 30 seconds or so. That's called a static release. Again, I can do these little short movements if I want. 30 seconds is about the maximum amount of time I need to spend. Now I'm gonna do my dynamic release or my pin and stretch, just like I did for my calf. Here, I'm going to keep that muscle pinned down as I reach my arm all the way through a range of motion here. Okay, and again, I'm gonna do that about 8 to 10 times, nice and slow. The idea here is we're just trying to free up that tense muscle tissue so that I can get my shoulders in the right position, both for my squats and for my bench press. Now, I'm gonna do this in 2 more areas, okay? So that should pretty much cover the foam rolling I need to do for my squats. For the bench, I wanna do the chest anyways. I also wanna do the lat. The reason why, the lat inserts into the arm, and if the lat's too tight, it's gonna pull me this way. I can't get my shoulders in the right position if I'm pulled internally. So I'm gonna do the lat real quick here as well. Now, essentially what I'm gonna do is lay at a 90-degree angle to the floor. I'm gonna stack my shoulders. So I don't wanna be doing this like this. I'm not looking up towards the ceiling, I'm looking straight ahead. I'm gonna have my arm at about a 90-degree angle. I'm gonna get right underneath the armpit with this foam roller. Now, I can use my position here to add pressure or take pressure away. This can be very painful. Again, don't let yourself get past a 6 or a 7. Nice deep breaths while you're doing this. Once I've held this for about 30 seconds, my dynamic release for this is just going to be bringing my arm overhead. Now guys, these don't seem like they're particularly powerful, but I promise you, if you do these on a regular basis, you'll notice a massive difference in your ability to do these lifts. I never used to do this warm-up stuff when I was younger. When I got to 30 years of age, I was super strong, but I was broken all the time. Once I got my warm-ups dialed in, I continued to get stronger, but I felt better and I was very rarely ever injured. The key here is to remember to stay focused on being mindful through this and making sure you're getting the response that you're looking for. Now, the last area we're gonna hit here, I find effective, is to hit the glutes, and that's gonna be to help us for deadlifts. So because the deadlift is a hip hinge exercise, if my glutes are a little bit too tight, it's gonna be really hard to hit the right position without rounding my back. So all I'm gonna do here, I'm gonna sit on my foam roller, cross my leg over my knee. So the side that I'm trying to roll, I'm gonna take that ankle, put it over top of the opposite knee. I don't want this leg to be straight because then I'm not really stretching that muscle. So I'm gonna bring this heel up. I always kind of joke around and say it's just like watching your old man read the newspaper or something. This is the position he's gonna be seated in. Now I'm gonna scroll up and down here to find the gnarly spot. Once I'm on there, I can hang out for 30 seconds. I can do a micro oscillation, but I wanna make sure I spend at least 30 seconds. And then my dynamic release, I'm just gonna grab the knee, pull up towards the shoulder for about 8 to 10 reps, okay? Now guys, this is kind of like a minimum effective dose type thing. I wanna get through this quickly. I don't wanna bore you with all the details. There are some different areas depending on what you need. So if you have other tight muscles and you find they're inhibiting your ability to hit some of these lifts, use those exact same techniques to hit those muscles, okay? Everyone's gonna be a little bit different, but important things to keep in mind. Once I've released the muscles, I wanna mobilize a little bit. So if I release the calf, now I wanna run the calf through the range of motion. So I don't wanna just release the muscle, I wanna re-educate my brain and my body to say that it's okay to be there. So I'm gonna put a little bit of weight into it and just shift into it. Super simple. I'm gonna do about 8 to 10 reps. I go about 2 seconds in, 2 seconds out. I'm gonna do that on both sides. All right, guys, very straightforward. Same idea for the chest. You can do this either as a chest stretch, standing up. I like to do this floor version because I find it's really cool to do and I get a really great result from it. So I call it a chest scorpion, but I focus on hitting the pec minor by keeping my arm up a little bit higher. But essentially I'm gonna be set up like this. Remember, if I wanna hit the pec minor, I need to be a little bit above 90 degrees. I'm gonna use this hand to push myself into the stretch. So I'm gonna count 1, 2, then go to the other side. 1, 2. I'm gonna repeat that for about 8 to 10 reps per side. Next one is the lats. Again, one of my favorite ones to really stretch out the lats and get some extension through my thoracic spine is just a push-up right up into what yoga peeps call it as a downward dog. So I'm gonna go into my push-up position here, and then I'm gonna drive my butt up in the air and push my head between my arms. Hold for a 2 count, come back down. And then I'm gonna repeat that about 8 to 10 times. Okay, that's gonna be a great stretch for the lats, a great stretch for the thoracic spine, and a great stretch for the entire posterior chain as well. So that right there is gonna set you up for most of your other lifts as well, okay? The very last exercise I'm gonna show you guys here, this is a great one for stretching the posterior chain and getting your lower back and your backside, your hamstrings ready for deadlifting. So this is just kind of a sumo squat to stand, really straightforward exercise. I'm gonna come down, I'm gonna reach down, I'm gonna grab onto my toes. The idea here is I'm thinking about pulling up on my toes the entire time. So you'll notice here, my back is nice and straight. All I'm gonna do is extend the legs and try to basically stand up while I'm still holding on the toes. So I wanna be pulling up the entire time. Every time I get to the top, I hold for a 2 count. 1, 2, pull my way back down. 1, 2, pull my way back down. You'll notice after you do this, after each rep, everything starts loosening up. Like, I'm 40 years old, guys, I'm 220 pounds. For years, I wasn't able to do that. And once I started doing a warm-up, within a couple weeks, I was able to go flat hand with my knees locked out for a hamstring stretch. So super powerful exercises. You need these to get yourself started with the lifts so that you can do them properly. Warm-ups are critically important. You wanna come in, bang off a bicep workout, whatever, warm-ups might not be that big of a deal. You wanna come in and power lift, you need to be warm, you need to be mobile if you wanna kick ass, bottom line. Without further ado, let's finally get over to the squats. We'll get into the fun stuff now. The squat, okay, so the squat is probably our quintessential knee dominant movement. We want to be able to hit a certain depth while remaining fairly upright. There's different schools of thought on the squat in terms of like how upright you want to be. Leaning over really far when you're going to squat is going to put a lot of shear force on your spine. You got to remember that the ground essentially is acting as a force pushing up. This weight is acting as a force pushing down. So if I've got a force pushing up here, a force pushing down there, my back wants to do that. I need to make sure that I can minimize that shear force by staying more upright in the squat. When I'm squatting, what am I really thinking? How do I initiate the movement? I want to think about the squat as just having a seat, all right? We can complicate this, and trust me, I probably will, but I really, at the end of the day, want to think about just sitting down. And I always kind of make the crack with my clients is imagine you're sitting down on the john. And the reason why I say that is because I'm going to want you to sit back. No one sits down on the can like this. I always say if you sit down on the can like that, it's gonna get real messy real fast, and the same thing will happen with the squat. So we wanna think about pushing the hips back to initiate the movement and letting the butt go back and then driving through the posterior chain. All right, guys, so we want us to think about having a seat while keeping our back nice and straight. That's the easiest way to put it. Now, outside of that, what are some other key concepts we wanna think about? Any of my videos, you're always gonna hear me talk about joint alignment, body tension, and bracing, okay? So joint alignment, what does that mean here? So when we're squatting, we wanna make sure that the knees are over the ankles, all right? So if I'm doing squats and my knees are doing this, my knees are not gonna be happy for very long, and I'm not gonna be doing a very good job of transferring power from my lower body to my upper body. Again, the weight's on my upper body, but it's my legs moving this, and I can't transfer power if I don't have good joint alignment. So I wanna drive the knees out so that they're over the ankles, okay? And the next thing is having alignment of my lower back. A lot of mistakes I see people make with squatting is that they start the movement by arching their lower back. As soon as you do that, you're compressing the discs of your lower back, you're weakening your core, and you're actually weakening the lower back. It might feel like a stronger position, but a muscle group that's short and overactive has a reduced ability to generate force. Okay, if we maintain proper length, tension relationships here, we're gonna have more power, not less. Okay, so when we do the movement, we wanna shift our weight by hinging at the hips this way, not dumping forward like that. So I'm braced, I hinge back, bend the knees, and just sit down, okay? As I'm doing that, I think about pushing the knees out, and it can be that simple. There's a lot of extra points we could add to it, but I wanna keep this simple and easy for you guys today so we can make sure that we're getting a good start to the sport. So hand positioning here can be a big deal for some people too. If I have less shoulder mobility, my hands are gonna probably end up wanting to be wider out. If I have more shoulder mobility, if I can get my hands in a little bit more tight, that's probably more ideal. My comfort zone is right about here, which ironically is about where my bench press would be anyways. So I wanna make sure that I'm getting nice and tight once I get underneath here. So what I mean by that is that I'm kind of pulling the bar into my back. I don't want to just be hanging out here. I want this bar to be stable. So I'm going to be thinking about squeezing my shoulder blades together and then pulling the bar down onto my traps. When I unrack, again, stability is key. I don't want to unrack like this with my feet split like that. I won't have any balance. I'm going to put my feet about hip width apart, and I'm going to be underneath the bar as if I was doing a squat. I'm going to stand up, step back, and then go out to the width that I want to be doing my squat. The reason why I don't unrack with my feet already wide is because when I step back, I'm gonna have to compensate for how far my foot is. And I'm probably gonna run into the rack with the bar. So if I unrack here, when I go to step back, that's what happens. Now immediately I've destabilized myself, immediately I've made my lift much harder. Okay, so feet in together, I'm gonna unrack, take a step back, get stable, step out to my width, get stable, take a big deep breath into my core, pull down on the bar. I'm gonna push my hips back and my knees out. And you'll notice when I re-racked, I was basically able to just run the bar into the J-hooks because I have them up at the right height. As long as I'm holding the bar forward as I descend, I know the bar is not gonna fall off the hooks. A couple key points that I didn't talk about already. So breathing. You wanna make sure that you're breathing properly when you're doing heavy squats. And how you do heavy squats is gonna be a little bit different than how you're doing your lighter sets. When you're doing lighter sets and you don't have to have like a maximum brace, so when you're doing some of your warm-up sets, it's okay to inhale on the way down, exhale on the way up. Just make sure you've got lots of air in your belly at the bottom and make sure that you're still able to maintain some degree of tension through your midsection. So I don't wanna lose this as I'm exhaling, right? Like right now, that's pretty soft. If I brace, if I think about co-contracting all these muscles, or I think about like Mike Tyson's gonna hit me in the stomach and I'm bracing for impact, now that's hard as rock. Now I don't need to have a full set of lungs for that to stay solid, but I do need to be able to maintain that tension as I'm going through the range of motion, whether I'm inhaling or exhaling. When you get really heavy, you'll change your breathing strategy. You'll do what's called the Valsalva maneuver. You don't have to remember that, but if you remember how it works and why, that's more important. I'm gonna take a big deep breath into my belly. I'm gonna fill up my lungs. I'm gonna brace my core, and I'm gonna hold my breath until I get out of the hardest part of the movement. So I really like to think about squatting in a pool, right? I'm gonna take a big deep breath. I'm gonna brace. Water's here. I'm not gonna exhale until I get past that. And the reason why is because what I'm trying to do here is generate pressure through my midsection. Pressure will increase the stability of my midsection. I don't want less stability when I'm in the hardest part of the movement. I want maximum stability when I'm in the hardest part of the movement. Hardest part of the movement is always gonna be here, all right? So I don't exhale until I get out of the hardest part of the movement. The reason why we don't do that breathing technique for high rep sets is because you'll get dizzy and probably pass out once you get past 6 reps. Okay, guys? So quick recap. We want joint alignment. So I want my knees over my ankles. I want full body tension. So I want tension through my core. I wanna make sure I'm not arching the lower back excessively. I want tension in my upper back. I wanna make sure that bar's not moving around. When I do the movement, I'm gonna initiate the movement by pushing the hips back slightly. I'm not tilting forward because then I'm gonna load up that lower back and lose balance. I'm gonna shift the hips backward, okay? Then I'm just gonna sit down just like I'm sitting on the John, all right? It's really that simple. So I'm here, nice and tight, shift the hips back, and just sit down. And we're gonna drive up. Now in powerlifting, they're always gonna wanna make sure if you're doing a competition at some point that you're hitting depth. Hitting depth typically means that your femurs are at least parallel to the ground. So that would not be considered hitting depth in a powerlifting competition. You would have to be at least here. You don't have to go down to there. You can, you don't have to. So do what works for you, do what you have the mobility to do, and do what allows you to still maintain, a safe range of motion and feel very strong in. All right, guys, now listen. I could probably go and do a 2-hour-long video on just the squat alone. When I'm training my clients one-on-one, I usually take a bare minimum of an hour just to go over the basics with them. So I'm trying to give you a ton of information here as quickly as possible. And I know it's really tough because I'm fitting in a lot of info here on a shorter video. I'm gonna stop there before we go on to the bench press, but you got the major key points. Now, when you're training this in the gym, how many sets, how many reps, rest time, that's gonna depend a little bit, but usually what I would start off with is a moderate amount of volume. Again, as a beginner, guys, you wanna get good at this movement. Don't think about doing low reps yet. You need to master the movement, and you need to do the movement more frequently if you're gonna master it. So aim at first for 8 to 12 reps of these bad boys, and make sure that you're dialing in the movement, and don't get egotistical about the weight. I know it's really hard, trust me, I made that mistake so many times in my lifting career, but I just wanna make sure that you guys are paying attention to doing this right, okay? Rest time in between sets. If you're doing 8 to 12 repetitions, you can rest anywhere from 90 seconds to 3 minutes in between sets. As you get heavier, you'll take more rest time. If you don't need a ton of rest time and you can still do the movements properly, then take a little bit less. That way you'll still continue to get good muscle gains, and you'll get in and out of the gym faster, and you'll be more efficient in general. Now we're gonna move on to the bench press next. Okay guys, so on to the bench press now. So again, as I mentioned earlier, I could probably go on for hours about this stuff, so I'm gonna try to cut this into the most important critical parts about form, sets, reps, rest times, that kind of thing. So as with any exercise, your setup is gonna be absolutely critical in terms of helping you to do the movement properly. So with bench press, what I'm trying to do is keep in mind that this is a full body exercise. So I wanna position myself so I can be stable, I can be in an appropriate place underneath the bar, and that I can generate maximum power. So in terms of of setup here, guys, a couple key things you want to think about. You want a fairly tight arch, okay? So which means I want to have tension in my posterior chain, but I don't want to be cranking my lower back. I want to be able to elevate my rib cage and pull my shoulder blades down and back, just like I do for rows, as I'm pulling the bar down. In other words, if my feet are out too far this way, I'm gonna probably end up with a rounded upper back and I won't be able to get my shoulders in the right spot. If I pull my feet back and I have them fairly wide, I've got stability left to right, and I've got tension in the posterior chain, which allows me to keep my rib cage up nice and high and pull that bar down in position. Underneath the bar, I wanna make sure that I'm set up so that I'm not so far away that when I unrack, I potentially hurt my shoulders, but I'm not so close that when I'm doing my reps, I'm running into my J-hooks, okay? As a general rule, you're gonna end up typically with the bar in and around, I'd say over top of your nose or your mouth. Your high point is most typically gonna be over your shoulder where your joints are stacked. Some guys that are higher level pressers, their high point's gonna be a little bit lower than that. But for beginners, I want your high point to be basically so that your joints are stacked at the top of the movement. So I know my end range point when everything's locked out, I'm gonna be here. I also know that as I'm approaching failure, I'm typically gonna deviate this way, which means I need to have a little bit of extra room so that if I get to those last couple reps and I don't have a ton of energy, I don't hit the J hook and have the weight come back down on my neck. As long as I'm about here, I'm gonna be good. If I set up any farther back, I'm probably gonna hit this J hook, okay? That's basically all I'm looking for there. I also know that my low point is gonna be usually around nipple height. How I find my low point, I'll give you guys, this is like a master tip here. I know I want my shoulder blades down and back at the bottom of the position, and I know that my shoulder blade position is directly linked to the arm position. So if I sit like this with my arms at 90 degrees, I pull my shoulder blades back and push my shoulders, not my elbows, my shoulders down towards my hips. My arms are going to come down probably to about 45 to 60 degrees away from my torso. So if I maintain optimal joint alignment, which I said is key, I didn't say this was gonna be easy, guys, lots of physics here. So I'm gonna have the bar over the wrist, wrist over the elbow. I know from here where my low point is. My low point's gonna be right about there. I also know my hand spacing because my hand spacing is gonna be such that my wrists are over my elbows. If I line myself up like this, I will have very little power, okay? So I wanna make sure I've got alignment. Again, alignment is gonna allow you to transfer force. Anyways, that's your setup, guys. That's a great place to start. Now, when I unrack, it's important that I don't race into my first rep. Take a second, set yourself. You wanna think about driving your shoulders down towards your hips. I talk about down and back a lot, but once you're laying down and back changes, all right? So think about shoulders towards the hips, that's gonna set them. And then think about pulling the bar down to that low point, okay? That's easier than thinking about where to put the shoulder blades because they will naturally end up in the right position. As you push the weight up, you'll exhale. Make sure you don't exhale all of your air, okay? When you push all of your air out, you're gonna round your upper back. Then you're gonna have a nice round back on a nice flat bench and you're not gonna be stable. So again, tons of info here, I know, but trust me, these are all critical components. There's a reason why this is world-class competitions and world-class people doing this stuff because it's not easy. So there's lots of key points. So lots of tension here. I want my heels behind my knees. I've got a nice tight arch. I'm generating some torque through my posterior chain. I'm gonna unrack the bar. Take a moment here, set my shoulders, take a big deep breath. Lower the bar, pull it down to my low point, and then exhale as I'm driving the bar back up. Now you'll notice here I'm not protracting my shoulders as I push the bar up, right? I'm just pushing it up till my elbows are locked out, but I still have my lats turned on by driving my shoulders to my hips. So I pull the bar down. Okay? Now, a couple key points here, guys, and then we can actually pretty much get through the bench press here, but joint alignment is key. So if I'm cranking my wrists back like this, what I'm doing is putting a force on my body that says that my arms are trying to flip this way. So I'm gonna change muscular activation, I'm gonna change my bar path. I want the bar lined up over the wrist. That's gonna allow me to transfer power most effectively, and it's gonna make sure my bar path stays exactly where I want it, okay? Okay, take home points. Tension throughout the body. So setup is key. You want your heels behind the knees. You want tension through your posterior chain. So I'm thinking about firing all these muscles before I even start my lift. I wanna make sure I'm not too far away from my bar, but not too close to the bar when I unrack. So I'm gonna want the bar about here. I'm gonna position myself underneath about here. When I unrack, I don't race into my reps. take a moment, set yourself. Drive your shoulders down to your hips, and then make sure your bar alignment is over your wrists. Pull the bar down to your low point. Drive the bar back up to your high point. Your high point is over your shoulder. Your low point's gonna be somewhere around nipple height. And then when you go to re-rack, same idea before, you can set your J-hooks up that you can just push the bar back. All right, guys? Ton of information there. I know it's a lot, but trust me, all these pointers, this stuff took me, 26 years to learn. I'm giving you a ton of information in the span of a few minutes. So I know it's a lot, but these things are all critical points. Now, sets and reps. We kind of talked about sets and reps a little bit over there. As a beginner, you want to have probably about 3 to 4 sets of 8 to 12 reps. Okay? In powerlifting, you're gonna slowly work towards doing heavier weights with less reps, but as a beginner, you want more reps because you want more chances to dial in your form. These lifts are a skill. You might have been able to tell here there's a lot of things to potentially think about, and you're not gonna be able to memorize them all in 3 or 4 reps. So the more good reps that you get in over time, the better you're gonna be at this skill. As you get better at bench pressing, lower the rep ranges, increase the weight. But wait till you're really good at this before you start doing that, all right? Now we're on to the deadlift. All right, guys, last move we're gonna talk about today is the deadlift. One of my personal favorites, actually. Now, I fully acknowledge that the deadlift can be a scary exercise for a lot of people. A lot of people are terrified of it because they know people that have hurt their backs. Potentially, they've hurt their backs picking something else up before. It has a bad reputation in some circles because of that. But if you do the deadlift properly, you have very little to worry about. So that's the key, is doing this properly. But that's the same with any other exercise here, guys. So I'm gonna give you all sorts of awesome pointers here on how to make sure you're doing this properly and that you don't hurt yourself. But on top of that, these are gonna be great pointers for helping you to develop tons of power. Deadlift is one of the best overall strength building exercises. It's a great exercise to build tons of mass on your posterior chain, hamstrings, lats, mid-back. It's just a fantastic strength and size developer. And for powerlifting, obviously, quintessential movement. You can't even compete without having a good deadlift. So let's get started. Again, with all these movement guys, setup is gonna be key. So there's different styles of deadlifting. I'm gonna talk about conventional today. You guys have probably seen before, there's sumo deadlifting, which is where your feet go a little bit wide. There's a squat stance deadlift variation as well, where your feet would be out about squat stance. Now, conventional, typically we're about hip width. What's the difference? A hip width or conventional deadlift is gonna tend to emphasize the posterior chain in the back a little bit more than a sumo stance. The conventional stance deadlift is oftentimes a little bit better suited towards guys like me that have long femurs and short torsos with long gorilla arms, okay? And the reason why is just a leverage thing. It's a physics thing, okay? The sumo stance deadlift, this way, is a lot of times better suited towards guys that have shorter femurs and longer torsos, because it allows, if you have a longer torso, you're gonna have a lot more of that shear force on your lower back when you're hinging over. I'm just gonna talk about conventional today, but in another video, if you guys wanna hear it, we can go into more depth on the sumo style as well. Now, again, guys, setup is gonna be key. If you're doing conventional deadlifting, typically hip width stance is gonna be your ideal stance, okay? So we can go a little bit wider if we want. We can go a little bit narrow if we want. The literature will tell you, and anecdotal evidence from myself and all my clients, I will tell you that hip width is gonna be usually where we wanna be, okay? The reason for that is if we go a little bit wider with our feet, I have to go out wider with my hands. If I go out wider with my hands, I have to get lower to the ground in my start position. So I'm putting myself at a mechanical disadvantage by doing that. Now, if you're a guy that's a little bit bigger around the midsection, that's totally okay. You might find that you have to go a little bit wider with your stance just to make sure that you can keep your back straight. That's totally cool too, but just understand that we want to try to just put the feet out as wide as we need to and no further. For myself, it's going to be typically about hip width. This is a posterior chain exercise. I'm trying to hit the back side of my body. So what I mean by that is I'm going to try to keep my shins relatively vertical in my start position. Now, how does that relate to posterior chain? If I start shifting my knees farther forward, I'm going to start hitting the anterior, the front side of my body. I'm going to hit my quads more. And I'm gonna be a little bit, this isn't really gonna be a pull anymore, it's gonna turn into a glorified squat, okay? So I wanna keep the shins fairly vertical in that start position. Now, I wanna think about my back being nice and straight. So guys, and what I mean by a neutral spine basically is just a nice straight back. So I don't wanna be like this, I really don't wanna be like that if I can avoid it. I wanna be neutral. So here, in this start position, I like to think about chest up, ass out, because that's going to make sure that I'm keeping this area nice and straight. So my start position, I want my shins vertical, my armpits over the bar, and I want a neutral spine. So I'm thinking chest up, ass out. Now from here, all I'm gonna do is pull the bar in a nice straight line up to the top of the movement. You guys may have seen people before hyperextending at the hips, or the bar will get out in front of them. We wanna avoid that stuff. We want a nice straight path, okay? The fastest way from point A to point B is a straight line. And I wanna make sure that I can get to my top position as fast as possible. So I wanna pull in a nice straight line. If my knees are coming forward, I can't pull straight. So, shins vertical, the bar over the center of the foot. I'm gonna grab the bar, I'm gonna turn my lats on. Now you might notice there's some repeating themes here, and that's gonna keep it easier for you guys. Turn my lats on. Remember when I did squats, I turned the lats on, I pulled down on the bar. Remember when I did bench press, I turned the lats on, I pushed the shoulders down towards the hips, okay? Lats are not just for rows, they're also for stabilizing and creating total body power because the lats connect to the hips. If you guys wanna learn more about how the lats really contribute to total body power, we've got an awesome video on this channel called How to Build a V-Shaped Back. So make sure you check that out. You're gonna see yours truly on there too. So it's one of my favorite videos. But anyways, we wanna make sure we're turning the lats on, okay? So I'm gonna do a rep here. I got a couple more points I can go over with. I don't wanna flood you with too much information. Probably already have, but that's okay. I'm gonna do a couple reps here and show you guys what I mean. So feet are hip width apart, shins relatively vertical. I'm gonna think chest up, ass out. I'm gonna turn my lats on. Big deep breath, brace that midsection. At the top, I'm just coming to neutral. Think about getting tall, all right? That is not neutral because I'm not tall. This is not neutral because I'm not tall. Just get tall. Think about bringing your head up towards the ceiling. On the way back, you wanna initiate your return trip with your hips, not your shoulders. So I wanna think about butt going back and the bar going straight down. Okay? If I initiate my return trip with my shoulders, watch what happens to my back. So I'm here. Okay, now I've lost lat tension, I've lost neutral spine, and that's not good because now I'm losing power, okay? That tends to be one of the positions that are more likely to cause lower back pain or lower back injuries when you're doing this movement. So and let's talk about that for a second. Because this is one of those movements that people get really scared about, let me tell you why. If the back gets into a rounded position during the movement, it becomes very destabilized. If you start with a very slight round and you maintain that because you're braced, you're a little bit safer. Ideally, we're gonna be in a neutral position throughout the duration of the lift. What you don't wanna do is pull a weight that's so heavy that you start neutral and then you go into flexion. That's where it gets dangerous, okay? So if you guys aren't bracing or if you're lifting too heavy, that's what's gonna happen and that's when you're gonna get hurt with the deadlift. So that's what you guys wanna avoid, plain and simple. If you avoid that, for the most part, you're smart about how you do the exercise, you're smart about how much weight you pick. It's actually a very safe exercise. You just need to be smart about it, okay? Now bracing, again, I know we talked about it a little bit with squats, but when I'm bracing, what am I doing? I'm taking a big deep breath into my belly and I'm bearing down, okay? So I'm thinking about someone punching me in the stomach, I'm bracing for impact, okay? So when I'm doing that, I flex all of these muscles. So if I had someone come up to me, and you can have one of your friends do this, have them come up and dig their thumb into your spinal erector. If you're bracing properly, that spinal erector will fire, it'll push the thumb out. If you're not bracing properly, you're just flexing the abs, you won't get that effect. Another thing you can do to yourself, push your thumbs in on the side. If you're bracing properly, those are gonna push out. If you're just flexing your abs, nothing's gonna happen, okay? Bracing is the key to making deadlifts safe. Bracing is the key to giving you lots of power. So make sure you dial that in. Now, I got one or two more points here and then we're gonna wrap this up. I don't wanna keep you guys here all day. A great analogy I once heard about deadlifts was to think of yourself like you're a crane. Not the animal, but the piece of machinery that's lifting. If you've ever seen a crane work before, you've got your truck, you've got the arm, you've got the pulley, and you've got the hook. The pulley here is your armpit. The line is your arm, the hook is your hand. This guy doesn't do anything other than hold the weight, all right? Now, if you've ever seen a crane before try to pick something up, if the truck was here and it tries to pick something up here, what's gonna happen when it leaves the ground? It's gonna swing out that way. All right, and if something was here, it's gonna swing out that way. So if you're behind the bar this way, you're off balance, the bar won't even come off the ground first off because it can't come through your legs. It won't move until my pulley is above the hooks because right now I'm behind that. And if I'm here and I'm this way, so now my hook is behind the pulley this way, as soon as I go to lift the bar off, it's gonna swing out from me. All right, that's another way that people potentially hurt themselves. because the farther this bar gets off of my center line, the greater the weight of that, okay? And that's serious business, guys. And the easiest way to test that, when you're standing here, just try to push the bar out. Feel how heavy it is. Don't do it with weight on the bar, do it with an empty bar. And the second you get about there, you will feel how unbelievably heavy that bar gets. So you wanna keep this guy over your center line while you're doing your pull. Quick recap. Setup is key. Feet are gonna be about hip width apart. If we need a little bit extra room because we got a bit of a belly, that's fine. Just try not to push the legs out super far unless you're switching to a different variation. My hand position, I didn't cover this, but I can say it quickly, is gonna be just wide enough that I don't have to get lower, but not so narrow that my knees have to work around my massive biceps. In my start position, I wanna make sure my back is straight, so I'm gonna think chest up, ass out. I want my armpit to be over the bar. From there, I'm just gonna brace and pull, boys. So I'm here, and I come up to neutral. Again, neutral, just think get tall, squeeze your butt cheeks, squeeze your core. Don't have to drive through. We don't wanna drive through. Return trip, hips guide the movement. The bar's gonna go straight down. Okay? Now, most of the technical stuff is all there for you guys. Again, if you guys wanna see a longer video on this, say it in the comment section. We can make a 2-hour-long video just on this one exercise, but I don't wanna keep you here all day. I will, however, talk about some sets and reps now, and I will talk about something called touch and go versus stop and go with the deadlift. Sets and reps, guys, kind of same with your squats and your bench press. So because we're talking about beginner level stuff here, you want more volume at the start so that you can get better at the movement. Now, deadlifts are very demanding on the body. They will make you very sore, and they can really have a significant impact on your central nervous system. So you've heard me talk about overtraining before if you watched any of our other videos. Deadlifts is one of those exercises that can lead to overtraining if you do it excessively and repeatedly to failure. So get your volume in, but don't annihilate yourself with this, especially if you're doing squats the same day, because you'll beat yourself up fast, okay? I'll usually recommend 3 to 4 sets. Again, 8 to 10 reps, even 6 to 10 reps with the deadlift. I would stay on the higher end of that and then start to work more towards lower reps as you get stronger. But you don't need to do a bajillion reps of deadlifts. Once you fatigue these muscles and they get tired, hurting yourself becomes something that's gonna be a little bit easier to happen. So build up the volume if you're gonna do it, and just be smart and listen to your body. Last thing I wanna talk about here is touch and go versus stop and go. So this is more a technique thing. A touch and go method of deadlift would be like this. Stop and go is gonna be a little bit more like this. As beginners, I would prefer to see you guys do a little bit more of the stop and go method for a few reasons. It's safer, it allows you a chance to set up better, and it's gonna allow you to build end range strength. So we're not gonna be bouncing the weight off the bottom. We're not gonna be using momentum to get through the lift. So it's gonna help you to dial in that start position and build strength off the bottom. So if you're gonna do a touch and go as opposed to a stop and go, where it can be beneficial is establishing rhythm to the lift. If you're gonna be doing higher reps and you're trying to get a good rhythm to the lift, where you're not overthinking it, if you're gonna do that, if you're gonna do a touch and go for that method, just make sure you're not ramming the weight off the ground and bouncing it, okay? Every time you bounce that weight, you're destabilizing your lower back. So if you're gonna do it like that, you wanna maintain control on the way down. Don't let the weight drop and then just yank it up. That's one of the other things that will lead to injury. So make sure you don't do that. So big difference between stop and go and touch and go. You got your sets, you got your reps. Deadlifts, guys, rest a little bit longer in between sets. Even if you're going 8 to 12 reps, 8 to 10 reps, rest 3 minutes in between sets. That's okay. This is a very demanding exercise, and you need to recover fully to be able to do your best at it, okay? As you guys get better and better at this, and you're doing lower reps with higher weights, you wanna take more rest in between your heavy sets, okay? So like when I'm doing a maximum lift to deadlifts, I might take 3 to 5 minutes, sometimes even longer in between my last set and the previous set. So that's it for the deadlift for today, guys. I'm gonna head over and cool down, follow me over there, and we'll wrap the video up. All right, guys, so that's it for today's video. Before I sign off here, I just want to do a couple quick notes about cool down. So when you guys are doing powerlifting, a cool down is going to be necessary to help speeding up your recovery. You should be doing this with a lot of workouts anyways, but one of the best ways I've found to speed up recovery and to make myself less sore is just 10 to 20 minutes of nice, just chill blood flow cardio. So I'm not really thinking about trying to burn calories here. All I'm thinking about is flushing all of my muscles with fresh blood, I'm clearing out the metabolic waste, and I'm just speeding up recovery. That's it. Now, you can also do some light stretching afterwards. You guys will know, obviously better than me, which muscles are tight. If you, for example, are trying to do squats and you notice your adductors are super tight, well, at the end of your workout, during your cool down, stretch them. If you notice your hamstrings are super tight, stretch them. Wait to do the static stretching until the end of your workout when your muscles are warm. Pretty straightforward stuff, guys. There's no real magic there. It's just being aware and being mindful of what your body needs and then making sure that you're doing it. All right, so we covered the squat, we covered the bench, we covered the dead, we covered the warm-ups and the cool downs. That's everything you guys need to get started and to feel comfortable going into any gym and starting on your powerlifting journey. Now, if you guys liked this video, please hit subscribe. Check us out. We're putting out 2 of these videos every week. Like the video itself too, that would be awesome. Any comments, please mention in the comment section. Again, try not to forget to, we don't just make YouTube videos, guys. We have award-winning supplements. If you guys are getting into powerlifting, you're gonna wanna look into that. Check out bluestarnutraceuticals.com. Some of my favorites are Status Testosterone Booster that will help you on your powerlifting journey. GH Peak will help you to rest and recover. PPK, trust me, you're gonna want a little bit of pump power and kick for some of your powerlifting workouts. They're all amazing. Check them out, guys. Anyways, that's it for me. I'm signing out. Until next time, stay strong. All right, guys, thank you for joining us for another Blue Star Nutraceuticals training video. And remember, if you want to continue to build muscle and burn fat, we've got awesome content here and here. Hit the subscribe button right here. I promise 2 videos every single week that'll help you reach your muscle building goals. We're not just a YouTube channel, we also make award-winning supplements. So no matter what your goal, we've got the supplement for you. So check us out at bluestarnutraceuticals.com.